Good morning and thank you. Thank you for the invitation from Chiang Mai University. Thank you especially to Ajahn Saichon who extended the invitation to me. And because I'm a short man like Kun Pan, I feel that I disappear if I sit at the table, so I will rather give my talk standing up. I made a small change to the title of my talk, and I added that I'm not just going to talk about history in general, but I'm going to talk about artwork as a resource for the study of the history of mentalities, which is really an English word that was translated from the French, l'histoire des mentalités, meaning the way people think, the way people conceive of themselves and their environment, their beliefs in the past. I'm going to address this topic by considering Thai murals as a source. Now, there is nothing new in looking at Thai murals, because for a long time, not only art historians, but also historians have looked at Thai murals as a possible source alternative to written documents. For instance, the late Professor David Wyatt published late in his life a small book entitled Reading Thai Murals. However, there is a problem which I'm going to show you here. This hotel, the hotel where we are staying, is full of reproductions of Thai murals from Wat Phra Min in Nam, not far from Chiang Mai. In my rooms and in the corridors there are pictures from the murals of Wat Phra Min. Now, what historians generally do is to look at pictures like this and consider what they show. So, for instance, if we look at these scenes from the beautiful murals of Wat Phra Min, what do we see? We see northern Lao women working at the loom, spinning textile. One of them is actually smoking, as she advises the younger woman, maybe this is the youngest sister or a daughter, working at the loom. So, from this picture, historians reconstruct a picture of social history. How did women in the past in a northern Muang like Nam, they live, how they contributed to the economy, what kind of habit perhaps they had. The picture shows us that it was normal for women to smoke churro. This is not surprising when we think about, Burmese women. That's not the kind of analysis I want to pursue today, however. I'm not going to look at pictures for what they show us. I'm going to consider pictures for what they meant. What kind of message and what kind of worldview did this picture contain? So rather than just looking at what they describe, what they show, I'm trying to interpret them in a way to reveal how Thai have conceived of their other. Farang, Kek, Kong Jin. Now, Ajahn Sititeb told me that the Thai expression to translate this word other is Kunhung, right? The one that is the one different from us, the other from us, Kunhung. And I'm going to do that by beginning with a really remarkable murals from Wat Kokeok in Phetchaburi. This is remarkable for different reasons. The main reason, the first reason, is that actually is the earliest dated murals known in Thailand. You can see 1734 or Putta Sakarat 2227. What do we see in Wat Pho My? There are many scenes that illustrate the life of the Lord Buddha, but there are two scenes in particular which are very interesting. This one tells the story of the Buddha who tamed the wild elephant Nalagiri. And these scenes of the miracle performed by the Buddha is witnessed by a group of Farang. In fact, the Farang in this picture are not just any Farang. They clearly are Farang sect. Okay, they are French people. From the way they are dressed and from their high style, we recognize them to be Farang sect. Except that one of these Farang sect is not dressed like the other ones in a European style. Is dressed like a Buddhist monk. Why? This is a very odd way of presenting this. It may be a reference to the fact that during the early period of Ayutthaya, French missionaries, French Christian missionaries, used to dress up in the style of monks to signal their status, not as lay people, but as religious missionary people. And you can also see that this character in particular is looking up. He's looking up at the scene that is taking place in the upper register. So what is the artist here trying to say? Tell us. Obviously, the Christians are looking in respect and awe, perhaps even, to the miracles performed by the Buddha. And this figure here that looks like a Buddhist monk is not a Buddhist monk, is one of the Christian missionaries. On the same wall, a couple of scenes next, is another picture that shows another miracle performed of the Buddha. This is the miracle that the Buddha performed to defeat the heretics. The Buddha met the heretics in a town in Sravasti, and he had a dialogue with them, and he defeated them. He defeated their logic, their reasons, by dialogical means. The artists that we don't know these artists. We know that they wrote this painting, but we had no idea who this artist was. This is often the case of most Thai murals. But we know that the artist was either very smart, very intelligent, he had a very potent imagination. Or he was suggested, perhaps, by one of the monks in the monastery on how to represent these scenes. Because rather than representing this as a competition in words, the artist gave us a very different representation. First of all, who are the heretics here? These are not the Indians of the time of the Buddha. Look at how they are dressed. Look at their headgear. Look at their clothes. These are Muslim Indians. These are Indians represented in the style from the time of the Mughal dynasty. So these are Muslim, they are Kek. Some of them even have dark skin. The Buddha appears at the pavilion where the dialogical competition is supposed to take place, and he defeats them not by words, but by performing a miracle. So once again, as in this scene before, we have others from the Thai, Farang, Kek, who are presented as different from the Thai because they have a different sasana. They don't share the same Buddha sasana as the Thai. There are other Christians or Muslim. And this element characterizes them as Kun Hun from the Kong Pai. This is a very famous lacquer cabinet which is kept in the National Museum in Bangkok. And it's probably from either the late period of Ayutthaya reign or from the beginning of the Rattanakosin reign. It's beautifully inlaid with mother of pearl, and the two figures on the two sides of the cabinet are again a farang and a cake. They seem to be having a conversation or maybe an argument. Certainly the cake seems to be saying something, and his fingers are also pointing to some kind of gesture. And the farang, well, we don't know whether he's listening or he's walking away from this conversation. We don't really know, again, who the artist was. We don't know what the artist wanted precisely to express, but we can make some guesses, maybe even some educated guesses. First of all, where do these images come from? In the case of the farang, the similarity with this very famous portrait of Louis XIV, the Sun King of France, is very strong. Look at the way Louis plays his legs, like a dancer. And look again at the way the farang is walking away, in a kind of dancing style. And also the clothes overall resemble the clothes of 17th century Europeans. As for the cake, well, there are different guesses we can make. It could be a portrait of Shah Jahan, who was a contemporary of King Narai and also of King Louis. He may be not Jahan himself, but his own son, Emperor Aurangzeb, who succeeded Shah Jahan in the second half of the 17th century. Or maybe it can be Shah Sulaiman of Persia, because Sulaiman sent an embassy to Ayutthaya, very famous embassy, and there is a record of this embassy. And the point here is not so much to try to guess who these people on the cabinet are, but to show how the artist here clearly relied on images that were available in Ayutthaya at that time. Maybe copies of this very famous portrait, maybe engraving, printed copies that the French brought with them, and even easier in the case of these Mughal miniatures, because unlike oil paintings which are very large and need to be reproduced, Mughal miniatures are very small. They are printed on small pieces of paper, so they can be easily imported and brought over. Now, I think I have a different picture of this that shows you, of course, you're all very familiar with the way a cabinet looked like. And as you know, what is the function of these cabinets? To hold the scriptures. Now, this seems to be a very, very interesting question. So if this cabinet is supposed to hold the Buddhist scriptures, what are these two figures doing on the front doors? There is an American art historian, Hiram Woodward, who has proposed a theory by looking at the back of the cabinet, where there are two figures of Kinnari, or devatas to be more precise. And they seem to correspond to two figures on the front, two devatas at the back, two farang kek on the front. So Woodward's theory is that these four figures, the two on the front and the two on the back that you don't see,